Good evening, everyone. The quietness suggests you don't need to use the hammer at all, right? But in case you don't know me or recognize me, I'm Peter Forsgren.
Oh, good point.
No, and I did not lose a bet about the vote to cut my hair. It was done before the vote. So we will get to more to that later. But if I call the meeting to order at 6:34 p.m. and ask for motion to approve the agenda. Marty, thank you. Second, Joyce. Now is a time, I believe we do have an amendment we want to make due to change in minutes, yes?
Yeah, I wanted to pull 4A from the consent calendar, or pull A from the consent calendar for the minutes of the board meeting. We just have to make an amendment on them.
Right, so you're making a motion to pull 4A out of the consent calendar, right?
Correct.
And essentially move it down into, I don't know. I don't care necessarily where we put it, right? But we need to discuss it independent, and consent calendar items are not discussed, just FYI.
7F?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll forget, so please remind me by then of 7F.
You got it.
But, so we have a motion to amend. Second, Brian, thank you. Any comments, questions about why? All in favor? No opposed? 7-0. So now a motion to approve the agenda. Not approved. Now to vote on the agenda as amended. All in favor? 7-0. Thank you. That brings us to our first thing. Always a great way to start. Our bright spot. You ready for that, Mr. Provenzano?
I am ready for the bright spot. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share our bright spot. And first and foremost, greetings and a happy new year to everyone out there from our Fairport Central School District. Our schools are full of all sorts of joy and a spirit. I'm looking forward to the next couple of days because they'll be closing out 2022 in grand fashion, and looking forward to a new year. So happy holidays, everybody. And the bright spot is relative to the season of giving. A feeling of gratitude is in the air in Fairport. It's the season of giving, and our staff and students always rise to the occasion. You'll see acts of generosity in every hallway and in every classroom. But even during the season of giving, some things are still a surprise. Students at Northside wrote and delivered messages to their advisor buddies in the spirit of Thanksgiving, while their peers at Martha Brown collected donations of canned goods and raised record-setting funds for the Parenton Food Shelf. Our student athletes embraced their civic responsibility and led the way. Field hockey, girls soccer, boys volleyball, and football all chose charitable causes to support during their seasons. The boys varsity soccer team collected over $2,000 for Anna's Wish to help raise the spirits of children and families fighting pediatric cancer. And it's one of the shining moments of every school year, the big finale of Fall Crawl, when the elementary school teams hand off the funds they've raised to support the patients at Golisano Children's Hospital.
The spirit of giving in Fairport is gigantic. I think about what the adults do with the Fairport Music Festival, and I just think that spirit of giving is probably learned and filtered all throughout the community down to all of these schools. Maybe they learn it early here in Fairport. But what I think about, of course the dollar amount is tremendous, and we need that and we use it, don't get me wrong. But I think what it means for families like my own that need a Golisano Children's Hospital, we might not be in your hospital room, but these gifts mean we're thinking of you, we're honoring you, we're honoring this tremendous challenge that you all are facing, and we believe in the staff that are providing the care that hopefully is saving your child's life. It's a vote of confidence, it's a hug, and it enables us to do what we do. There's nothing better.
Coffee, hot cocoa, a little bit of both. What do you want? A little Dunkin'? Our Fairport staff are at the heart of each of our schools and departments. And it's the district's great privilege to show them the support and care they give our students every day with our Fairport Season of Giving twist. From all of us at the Fairport Central School District, we wish you the warmest season of giving and a very happy new year. Thank you, and thank you to Lindsay Reddick for helping choreograph all of those wonderful moments.
Thanks. Love it. Glad to highlight all the giving that's done, and it's just a fraction really of what is done by the end of the school year. That takes us to our student advisory report. Sarah Grover, glad you're here. Come on up if you will.
All right, good evening, everyone, and happy holidays. I'm so glad to finally be back to provide you all with an update as we approach 2023. This one's kind of going to be a bit more lengthy because I was not here last month, and I'll explain why. So I want to begin by reflecting all the way back on the senior trip to Boston in November. It was a blast. We loved the Blue Man Group, Quincy Market, the Duck Tour, exploring Harvard Square, the aquarium, and the dance. That was until the class of 2023 was hit by some sort of plague when we all got back to Fairport. Almost everyone, including myself, which is why I wasn't here, missed multiple consecutive days due to catching the flu after the trip. However, we're all feeling much better and have had a wonderful December so far. Fall sport athletic achievements have been released, the most prominent one being senior captain soccer player Miles Palmer. He has earned not only all region and all state recognitions, but literally all American recognition as well, which is crazy impressive. So congratulations to Miles. Additionally, winter sports are now off to a great start. Brady Unger, senior and University of Buffalo wrestling commit on the Fairport wrestling team, just won the Monroe County championship for his weight class. The rest of the team is doing awesome things as well. The hockey team, which is about to play in like another half hour, both boys and girls basketball teams, the track team, and especially the bowling team as well, are hard at work in their divisional seasons preparing for their domination in sectionals later this winter. So go Raiders. Downstage just recently presented their first show of the school year this past Friday evening. If you're not familiar with this activity, Downstage is an improv comedy club that does bits depending on audience participation. Almost everything they do is off the cuff, and it's actually hilarious. I attended the one on Friday, and it was my first time. It was hilarious. Everyone was so fun to watch and did great, despite that so many of them are brand new members. If you've never been to one, their next show will be in February, and I encourage you to see it. The Spanish National Honor Society's induction ceremony was last Thursday. About 75 Spanish students who have proven academic excellence in the language for the past few years were inducted. The officers, as well as the Spanish 5 AP students, capped the night off with their performance of the Mexican hat dance, or in Spanish, El Baile Jarabe Tapatio. Huge congrats to all of the awesome and hardworking foreign language students. Juniors taking AP Humanities have been extremely busy this month. A couple weeks ago, they took a field trip to the Memorial Art Gallery, as well as to Mount Hope Cemetery to view the grave sites of Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass. Additionally, the Civil War Museum Corner felt a huge weight off their shoulders after completing their 80-minute presentations of everything 1800s. I'm sure they and everyone else are looking extremely forward to this holiday break. To continue, our musicians, as always, showed out with success. The Holiday Pops concert was on December 12th and showcased the performances of our wonderful choirs and orchestras in several well-known holiday songs. It's truly amazing to see and hear the ever-blossoming talent of our music students. Finally, the NASA class and club presented their Hunch projects in the library last week, which many of you members were able to see. If you don't know what Hunch stands for, it's high school students united with NASA to create hardware. So it's a bit of a stretch, but despite the wordy title, it was amazing to see the uses of physics and chemistry by the students to make effective hardware and soft goods that have potential to be used on the International Space Station. While I'm sure we all have a busier schedule than usual this time of year, I personally encourage you all to truly embrace this holiday season in particular. It's so easy for us to get caught up in our crazy lives at school and work that we miss the beautiful opportunities that we should be attentively spending with our loved ones. And I suppose I should be taking my own advice on that too. I wish for everyone to have a relaxing break, a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, a Happy Kwanzaa, and anything else I may be forgetting, and definitely a Happy New Year. Thank you all for having me tonight.
Thank you. Great report. Thank you, Sarah. Brings us to the public comment period of our meeting tonight. We have 4 signed up. There'll be 3. Is that right? One unable to attend now with a change of schedule. Just a reminder, everybody has 3 minutes. I'll set the timer, and I'll call you up with your address, and then set the timer when you begin, and try to give a 30 second warning if needed, and go from there. Please be courteous and respectful, reminding that to say names, at least in a negative light, is really inappropriate, and we can take things offline. And just reminded that I once again forgot the fire exits. Yes, I did. Thank you, which are 4 doors, one on either side of the curtains, and these main doors of which you came in and then immediately out to the left. So with that, let's go with public comment. Our first one is Mary Hamley at 9 Oak Hill Terrace. If you'll come to the podium here, please. Oh, thank you, Mary. Then our second one is Nicole Thibault at 76 Waterford Way.
Green, okay. Hello, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. First of all, I wanted to thank the Fairport Schools and the Board of Education for changing the senior photo dress requirements. Having male students wear shirt and tie and female students wear dresses was kind of an antiquated requirement and made some students feel uncomfortable and anxious. Gender non-conforming students were made to dress in clothing that did not match their preferred gender identity. Enabling students to choose business casual clothing that best matches their identity helps them express themselves in a more authentic way. And so I thank you for this revision. Secondly, to the parents and community members who continue to speak out and alienate our LGBTQ students, please stop. Hate speech turns into hate action. As we've all seen in the recent events in Colorado last month, don't let your hateful rhetoric create similar situations here locally. While free speech is important, I call on the community and Fairport Board of Education to curtail the use of this forum for actual and real hate speech. This is a forum to express thoughts and ideas about our community and our schools, and it's not a place to direct insults and diminish our LGBTQ students who are actually children. As members of the Fairport community, it's our obligation to welcome all students to our schools. Everyone who stands up here and speaks should use their words as an example for your children on how to treat others, including fellow students, students of color, varying backgrounds, religions, and sexual orientations and identities, and differing abilities. Fairport schools need to be a safe place for all of our students, regardless of who they decide to love and how they choose to identify. They deserve the right, the basic human right, both in and out of school, to live their lives authentically and safely. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Amber Brown, residing at 46 Nelson Street.
So today is my birthday, and if you will indulge me for a moment, I just wanted to take this opportunity to tell you that I love the crap out of my kids. They're kind and creative and funny and just good humans, 2 of my most favorite people. And as much as my husband and I would like to take credit for how awesome they are, we didn't nurture them in a vacuum. They are who they are in part because of the loving care that they have received in this community. Every now and then, the way that I check in with my boys about school is to ask them who their favorite teacher is right now. When I asked my oldest this question last week, he said, North, he's just amazing, or maybe Mrs. Nichols, I don't know. They both just make you so excited to learn. And in addition to sharing this with Mr. Northrup and Mrs. Nichols, I just really wanted you to know it. I know that you as the board know that Fairport has so many rock stars on staff. As my oldest is finishing his last year here, I can't help but reflect on the incredible teachers who have helped Matt and me shape our sons. Danielle McCadden taught both of my boys. She gave them the gift of holding them to high standards, showing them what they are capable of, and creating a fun, immersive environment that they truly loved learning in. She throws all of herself into transporting her students around the world when they are studying different countries or back in time when they are doing research on historical figures. Mr. Sleeman, Mrs. Hickey, Mr. Cole, and Mr. Cristofori supported them during the spring of 2020, simultaneously checking in on their emotional state and creating new ways for them to learn while at home. The art that my son created during lockdown was truly inspired, and the Minerva Social Studies department came up with a choose-your-own-adventure game for learning history that was so cool it made me want to enroll. I can't speak highly enough about the entire orchestra staff. Mr. Osterling, Mrs. Anderson, Mrs. Payne, Mrs. Glaze, and Miss Rick have given such an incredible gift to both of my children, especially inspiring my younger son. They make lessons fun and are so eager to challenge him and take extra time when he needs help. Mr. Scherner and Mr. Baruto took my oldest under their wing and gave him opportunity and guidance in directing plays at JP, and now this is something he is looking to study at college. Mr. Trewitz was warm and accessible and allowed goofy middle school humor to enhance his lessons, making his class a do-not-miss experience. My son will never forget the book debates that he moderated where students positioned themselves in the room according to whether they agreed or disagreed with an idea and then discussed them. And there are so many others, including the teachers, who affected my kids indirectly because of larger projects that they took on for the school or simply for the warmth that they foster here. Sheila Kachalova, Erica Mann, Sarah Shaber, there's too many to name. These teachers are those that we not only look back on with fondness, but who have helped my husband and me shape these incredible humans that we are so proud of. We are so grateful for these teachers and for the culture that the board has fostered that encourages them to inspire our children and make them excited to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's a core law, I think I'd ask to submit for evidence the full list of our teachers. Right. So thank you for that wonderful summary. So that's just the end of our public comment period. Thank you for those who came and appreciate it. Takes us to our president's report. What? Bye, Sarah. Sorry, get to my notes. It's been good. I look forward to the time when we don't necessarily mention COVID still, but I think this year enjoying return to traditions, right? The one that kind of made me think of it first was the Thanksgiving and the English, learning English for new language learners. I don't quite get that right, the ENL. That happened at Brooks Hill for so many years, and then COVID put a pause to that, but it started back up, at least a hybrid, a little bit, getting it back in. What a great thing to be returning to some traditions, which were just amazing. That was always an amazing event. I'm glad to have it. Sarah had mentioned the musical events, right? Concert seasons and going out into the public where they sing, as well as here at our own school. I attended the one at Eastview Mall. The jazz band there is just fantastic. I could have sat there for much longer and just listened to them play on. And not the best acoustics necessarily, but it was just really awesome. And they did such a great job. And just grateful for all these returning traditions. Since it's returning traditions, it is holiday season. Do want to echo what's been said, to wish happy Hanukkah to our Jewish friends and people who are celebrating that. We know it started just this past weekend for Christmas, building up to Christmas. We know for a lot, there's a lot of excitement that's coming up. So wishing everyone a Merry Christmas there, and then happy Kwanzaa, which will start, the 26th, I believe, and run through the new year. So exciting times. It is indeed the holiday season. And with all that, we'll wish everybody a happy new year if we don't do that at the end of the meeting, but hope that indeed we end 2022 on a strong note for everyone and start the new year well. If you don't mind, I wanted to share just an article I get from time to time. Was reading on the beauty of seeing different sides of an issue, right? Because this stuck out to me. It was just a couple quotes here. But both rising rates and high inflation can have very different practical effects depending on who you are and where you live. Gas prices matter much more to people who commute long distances to work. Higher interest rates are costly to people who rely on credit cards to pay their bills, while they can actually be good news for the retiree living off savings. It went on to explain some major differences across the pond, which doesn't necessarily matter, except that high interest rates is forcing people in England out of their homes. And here in the US, if you want to move, you can't get out of your homes because you can't afford to get into a new one. So it's just interesting how, right, the different perspectives. That's the point of education. That's the point of diversity. That's the point of bringing in different perspectives all along. I loved it. I love just reading it because, many of us will complain about the inflation, but there is a population or so out there that can benefit quite a bit from it. Fixed income, investments, and other things can really benefit in those areas. But anyway, as representative of the board, I did want to make a comment also around hate speech and graffiti. We are not immune in our community. We've seen that recently, and wanted to make an equivocal statement that we are opposed to. We find it repugnant, garbage being sprayed on people's houses or cars or other places of living that's happened around the community, and we're sorry that it has happened. We know that it causes pain, especially to certain portions of our population, minority, people of color, and we're sorry that it does that. And know that as an educational institution, we feel very strongly positioned to help fight that, continually fight that through our curriculums, through confirmation, and as been mentioned, providing safe spaces for everybody who walks through the door. We want this to be a safe space. We know we're not perfect at it, but we're going to put our full effort in that, and we're positioned well to do this, to fight the type of hate that we see in our communities, and we're sorry it happens. Recognizing the bond vote results. It was a no, as I mentioned humorously. I did not lose a bet in that. I would have lost a bet if I had. But I'm anticipating a robust discussion later on tonight. We have on the agenda moving forward with the resolution that was passed in May of 2019. And I recognize that with time, memories can fade. I've been around the world long enough also to think that some things might just kind of be forgotten and go away. This is not the case for this topic, right? And you'll see me speak for myself in this case, very adamantly propose moving forward with it at a quicker time frame than was anticipated for reasons I'll explain later. But if you hang around, I think you'll hear one of our more robust discussions that we have here at this public meeting. And just wanted to announce, because someone brought it up, it's just important to us. We're seeing increased interest in the community for universal pre-K. I received at least 10 emails this week on that, and we have out in the public right now our an RFP for a fourth section, right? Fourth section of UPK, and we're excited to be supporting that. But it's out there, and we look forward to that discussion throughout the budget process as well about how we continue to support those endeavors. That's part of my report, but I do think always appropriate to open it up for other comments from board members or any reports on committee meetings that may have happened. I don't know if any really have happened since our last meeting. Brian.
Well, so legislative committee, Joyce and Erica and myself, I didn't go to the last meeting, but we did have Zoom meetings with legislators and state legislators and senators and their offices. I believe it was earlier this month. Time is a thing now.
It was in the beginning of December.
It was the beginning of December, yes. And we thank our representatives and their deputies for taking time to listen to us. I think we express some of the things that we've talked about in previous meetings, some of the things that we want to advocate for collectively as Monroe County School Board Association. So we're grateful for that.
And some of the stuff that Peter just mentioned are on kind of the agenda for when we do speak with reps from the state. So the UPK funding clarification, also electric buses. There's just lots of different things that we are able to focus on. So.
And if I may, wanted to acknowledge last week the incident you mentioned, hate speech, Peter, and the incident that happened at Martha Brown with the unfortunate graffiti that was discovered, and just a really not great situation all around at that building. I give kudos to our safety team, Sam Farina and Brett, and the work that they did to ensure that our kids were safe, which is the most important thing. Our kids were safe. It was deemed an incredible threat. And I think that it was an emotional week. As Jan and I can speak as Martha Brown parents, it was an emotional week, I think, end of the week for us. And I think that, there are lessons to be learned from from that, and I'm confident that the district will learn them and move forward in a positive way. But again, want to stress the kids were always safe. I thank you for keeping our kids safe, and a special shout out to some of the teachers and staff in that building who on Thursday and Friday were doing everything they could to make the kids feel positive, feel safe, feel protected. Again, as we'll always say, it is terrible and unfortunate we live in a world where they have to have those skills, but I am so grateful that they do have those skills and can pull them out at a moment's notice to help our kiddos.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back to the legislative meeting and Zoom meeting with the legislators. While it was informative, it's nothing like meeting with them face to face, and I really look forward to that. Their legislative committee is planning to do the 2-day trip in a few months to Albany, and so I would let all of you know you're all welcome to take the trip. You don't need to be on the legislative committee, and it really is a worthwhile trip. And it is always very informative, very interesting, and it just is a different thing, as we've all found out, to sit around a table face to face versus looking at someone on a screen. So I look forward to when we can get back to that.
If I can add in, then you're right. But encouraged, because there's so many meetings. The more of us, the better we're able to divide and get to all the different meetings, because there's no way we can make them to all of them with the various legislatures that are out
Right.
there from our area.
Yep.
So the more that can go, the better.
And we had a wonderful visits to Minerva as a board, to Minerva the Land, and to Fairport High School in the past month. We had to work around schedules, so we did them all both in December. But very glad to see Bob's team at work and Dom's team at Minerva. Just again spending time with our incredible students and hearing their experiences and getting a look at what our teachers are doing in the classrooms. It's just sensational to see.
Very good. Anyone else?
I didn't know if I should have saved this for board comments, but I'm going to piggyback off of what Brian said about our visit to Minerva. I'm sorry I couldn't be at Fairport. My apologies. But I think thinking back to some of the comments about our hate speech, and this is not just something that I think adults are concerned. I know it's not something adults are concerned with. I can't say enough about the young adults that I was able to tour with that day. Their maturity and their insight, their compassion for this world. They're really the true leaders, and we need to take our cues from them. I think what was also echoed by Nicole in the public comments, that hateful speech leads to hateful actions, and they feel that every day as young adults. And I know how hard it is for me as an adult. I can't imagine the stress that puts on the shoulders of young adults. And that shouldn't be there. And I think it's our responsibility as adults to lighten that load. And that's certainly our charge, I think, as a board. So, but again, thank you, Minerva.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Brett, for superintendent's report, give the time to you.
So much has been said. It's a privilege of a lifetime to be able to serve the board's vision and mission. We've had incredible to share all the things that are happening because of the board's inspiring vision. You know, Bob Clark and his team, they're able to make amendments to the dress code for are comfortable and they can express themselves. Don Monticelli can create a freshman seminar to talk to students about, you know, the important things that our students need to be mindful of as they're navigating you know, social media and, you know, all the complexities as they go into high school. We have amazing teachers, as articulated earlier here, who make it all come to life. Our staff is the heartbeat of our school. Behind every great thing that occurs, we talked about the season of giving. That's because there's a caring Fairport educator that is empowered by a Board of Education's vision. Season of giving is intentional. It's an investment, and we're proud to put our students in positions so they can be future ready. We talk about future ready, and part of being future ready is being able to understand how to give back to a greater purpose in a global, diverse society. And again, if you look at the board's vision and mission, it clearly articulates it, and I'm honored to be able to serve that and highlight that each month. I'm not playing that again. This happens every month. We get hear that. But one of the pieces that I'm really proud about is SEED, Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity. Hundreds of our staff have participated in this project. And it's a way for us to unite people around humanity, right? There's a moral purpose that drives us all. And the board's investment in SEED, the board allowing us to bring people together to talk about the events that occurred in our very own community, which President Forsgren and Jan Fortuna spoke about denouncing in our community, not in our schools. We're gearing up for Brotherhood Sisterhood Week to make sure that voices are enabled. We have student forums where we can listen to students and connect to students about these very issues that occur every single day in their lives, and give them the tools and resources so they can learn how to process them, learn how to be better, learn from each other and grow from each other. Proud of it. But we have up here on January 18th and February 13th, we've put out personal invitations to leaders throughout the community. We hope they join us to talk about the issues that are important to our society, to our world, to humanity, and I'm honored to be a part of it. And we'll be talking more about that SEED project on January 18th and then on February 13th. Thank you to Kelly and her team who spent a lot of time organizing these very important events to come together, learn together, and heal and move forward together. Am I not sounding right? Thanks, Tom. Excellent transition.
Fine, we'll let you speak.
Mr. Loff, why don't you give us a little hiring update on some very important initiatives?
That me? Okay, thank you. Yeah, excited to share a hiring update this evening. So as you can see up on the screen, some updates as far as per diem substitutes and bus drivers. Excited to have 12 new per diem substitute teachers on the agenda for the board's approval this evening. Our daily substitute coverage has been much better the last couple of weeks as we continue to add more subs to our overall pool. But it should definitely be noted the appreciation for the all hands on deck efforts on a daily basis in the buildings to ensure that everything is covered. One new bus driver, which brings our total this year to 17 new bus drivers that we've hired. That's a great push as we continue to fill those positions. And you'll also, it's not on this sheet, but there's a recommendation on the agenda tonight for a new head bus driver to help round out our great leadership team at the transportation department. So we're really excited about the direction of the transportation department overall. And I think if we could go to the next slide. Wanted to just point out that we are in the process of a new hiring campaign to fill our remaining non-instructional, but obviously very important openings in buildings and grounds, transportation, and food service. That will culminate with a hiring event on January 5th, as you can see on the screen. The hiring event will be right here at FHS. Leading up to the event, if we want to go to the next slide, please. You can see that we are trying some new methods of advertisement for our hiring campaign right now. Leading up to the event on January 5th, we have 3 billboards currently, 2 that are digital and 1 that is printed. So the location of the billboards, if you haven't seen them, one is off of 490, so it's actually at Griffith Street. And then the printed one, you can see it's visible, let me make sure I get this right, from South Clinton and South Goodman heading north and west. And then the third billboard is, you can see it on University heading east. So we have some new ways that we're looking at advertising. In addition to the billboards, we have radio spots going right now through iHeartMedia and on WDKX. So you'll hear ads on WDKX, 95.1 and 107.3. And we also have a heavy rotation of social media posts happening with the 3 platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, leading up to this hiring event. We're excited to see how this goes. We are gathering data from our applicants to see which of these advertising mediums are most effective. And then we're planning another event early spring, which will probably include trying to hire more paraprofessionals because there's a constant need there as well. And then we'll see other positions depending on need. So thanks, huge thanks to a lot of different people, especially Lindsay Reddick, who's been involved in this process of looking for some new advertising avenues.
Thank you, Mr. Luff. Really appreciate that effort and looking forward to seeing our workforce join our Fairport family. As Mr. Forsgren shared, Fairport for 2022, the capital project vote was a week ago this evening, did not pass. We had about 2,500 voters who came out, and we had an exit survey, and approximately 5% of the people who actually came and voted, filled out the exit survey. So it's not a robust sample. However, it did provide some insights. We want to continue to develop them as we move along. The main themes were about, taxes, facilities, updates, and mergers, and making sure there's a focus on academics. But some of the top thoughts, again, community members, and this is, again, I'm really proud to be a part of a community that prioritizes academics and high quality programming. The top thoughts express that of our small sample size, but there was also at the same time a commitment to or a thought to being fiscally responsible and making sure that we can sustain ourselves into the future. So that came out frequently in our survey result. But there was also some ideas about the benefits of combining Minerva DeLand and Fairport High School. And I think this is something that we want to highlight as we continue to move forward in what we studied over the course of a few years with our District Advisory Council, and then in 2019 when the board made that resolution. The reason for the merger was about bringing our staff together to collaborate so they can naturally interact around curriculum, best practices in instruction, and making sure that our programming is really seamless for our students and accessible to all of our students. We want to give our students more opportunities, and having him here at the high school in one area would give us an opportunity to do that. We want to make sure that we tried to lessen one transition. Transitions are challenging for many students, and one less transition would be beneficial, and that's grounded in research and best practices, trying to minimize transitions throughout a student's educational journey. And then, of course, aligning start times to research, having our high school students start a little bit later. We were looking, or we continue to look at ways we could do that and flipping it with our elementary students. So those were the reasons behind the merger that we're going to continue to develop. As President Forsgren was sharing, in a little bit we'll be having a discussion. So we continue to learn. I think we continue to press on and try to achieve our facilities planning and our community's expectations actually around facilities planning. So I'll be looking forward to talking more about that in a little bit. Pretty soon we'll be hitting full swing in the budget season, and that will be a whole new level of energy as we celebrate our programming and build our narrative around what our priorities are, because the budget is a story. We'll continue to talk about that story through budget season so we can get community involvement and making sure that we're meeting the expectations of our community as we create a budget for 23-24. Sounds kind of crazy saying that, but that's where we are. Again, season's greetings to everyone. Wish everyone a safe, happy, and memorable holiday. This is it for 22 for me. That's it. Drop the mic. Out.
Thank you. Okay, our treasurer and investment update, Mr. Matt Stevens, if you'll provide that for us, please.
Okay, good evening and thank you. Tonight we have the treasurer investment update for the month of October of 2022. We had a beginning cash balance in the general fund of $60.4 million, receipts of the month of $66.4 million, and disbursements of $11.8 million for an ending cash balance of $115 million. Of the $115, about $114 million is invested in a mix of money market CDs, insured cash sweep, and treasury bills. About 99% of such funds. As we compare year over year, revenues, expenses line up pretty closely. You will notice if you're looking at last October, revenues are up simply due to timing of state aid in terms of when that money's received. Expenses right in line at about $32 million overall through the month of October. That is the report for October of 22.
And just a friendly reminder that you can find it down below in the consent calendar if you're watching from home.
I was going to say that.
Oh,
Right. Okay, right. So reminder that 4A is not really on the agenda anymore, part of the consent calendar, right? That's been moved down to 7F. So we will still need a motion to approve the consent calendar as it now stands, which is items B through G.
Second.
Who was the first? I'm sorry.
Brian,
Brian, thank you. Second was Erica. All in favor? No opposed, 7-0. And then personnel actions. So 5A, instructional actions. Motion to approve the instructional actions as outlined. Jan? Marty, second. Thank you. Questions, comments here? No? All in, right, yeah. I think you pointed out, right, that adding 45 substitutes and 17 bus drivers has to be close to a record or something. That's great.
We need to know if it's a record.
Don't spend your time looking it up, but we need to know. But yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed, 7-0. Non-instructional and civil service, motion to approve those as outlined. Ryan, Marty, second. Did we get that?
Nope. I think it's Marty and Joyce.
Marty and Joyce, right. Questions in this area? No? All in favor? No opposed, 7-0. Athletics, motion to approve the athletics as outlined.
So moved.
Erica, thank you. Brian, thank you. Questions, comments here?
Nice people are volunteering their time.
Always. Yep. Volunteer coaches, right, in this case. Thank you for pointing that out. Appreciate it. All in favor? Any opposed? None. 7-0. Memorandum of agreement with the Fairport Educators Association. Motion to approve. Mary Caitlin, thank you. Sorry, it's blank there for a moment. We don't work closely enough together, apparently. Right? Marty, second, thank you. Questions or comments about the MOA? No? None? All in favor? 7-0. And then a motion to approve a non-collective head bus driver wage adjustment.
So moved.
Erica, thank you. Brian, second. Questions, comments here? No?
Erica.
Oh,
Or Brian.
Brian's the second, yeah.
We're out of our group tonight.
All in favor? Very good, thank you. 7-0. And so our monthly presentation on the capital improvement project of 2019.
Kevin Arletta, thank you for coming to talk a little bit about how the project's going. Yeah, I'll get that presentation up. Here you go, Kevin. We okay, Mr. Stevens? How'd I do? Download that, okay. I'm coming along nicely. I don't blame you for checking my work, though.
Alrighty. So here's just a quick look at our overall financials, the different components that make up the overall referendum of $56,750,000. Won't go into each one of these, but these incorporate all of our prime contracts between 1A, 1B, our state contracts, incidental budgets, and contingency budgets. So a closer look at the financials based on contractor pay applications. We're just shy of 75% complete with the project. Through the month of November, we've approved $2.3 million in change orders, leaving us a little over $1 million left in the contingency, and we currently have $327,000 in contract allowances remaining. So looking ahead, as far as construction going on in the high school, With December break coming up, we've got a decent amount of work lined up, but down on the first floor, we're going to be continuing wall tile installation, and also in the boiler room, we'll be installing the new light fixtures in there. Up on the second floor, we're just wrapping up our 3 biology rooms, getting ready to turn those over to the district, and then prepare to start the next phase of classrooms. Once we turn these 3 over, we will be on to the final 4 science classrooms up on the second floor. Staying in the high school here with the finishes project, we're continuing to coordinate wall tile and locker installs. We've actually begun some just out in the hallway behind here. You'll see some new lockers and wall tile in there. And then over at 1B, the big push right now is over at Minerva DeLand, where we're installing window systems throughout that building. And then also at all the other buildings where we've done boiler room replacements this summer, we're working through with the design team as far as commissioning efforts. So just a broad look at the Phase 1A project. Again, we're dwindling down this list, still working our way through the science classrooms. And then our last large area we've got to tackle is the gymnasium, scheduled for this summer, where we're going to go in and refinish that floor, give a new paint job in there, and some acoustical wall panels. On the high school finishes project, again, we've begun installing lockers and wall tile on off hours in the corridors, but again, the big push is going to be this summer when we get through for the terrazzo flooring. And then 1B, again, working through Minerva DeLand window systems. Also, our team's preparing for Dudley and Northside to begin after the new year into the spring.
Northside is so excited about that.
Yeah, yeah.
We got the full tour, what it's going to look like and where it's going to be.
Awesome. And then our Smart Schools project. Our contractor is wrapping up punch list items on the first phase here as the district has begun the process for the reimbursement. We anticipate beginning that second phase come springtime, April.
Can I jump in for a second? Sorry, we were able to tour technology, and I know Brian posted on Facebook about it, but the Smart Schools project isn't as shiny as a lot of projects are often, but we got to see the new access control system and learn about how it's working and the magnitude of our internet usage as a district and what this is going to allow us to do more readily. And it was just very interesting. So I think some of these things often get overlooked by a shinier something, and this was just really great. And also being in the phase 1 buildings and seeing my kiddos at Dudley, so seeing when you go into the classrooms now, you have to have your fob to get into a classroom and it's locked, and it just it's that extra layer of protection that I think we can all appreciate.
So that $3.2 million that we were allocated to the Smart Schools Bond Act, I have to give the board credit when everybody was, hurrying up trying to spend that money to buy widgets, whatever the widget is in technology. The board was committed to putting in technology that can last relatively beyond the useful life of what currently is with iPads and
Right.
Other notebooks that occur that we see people
And I
continually
know-
purchasing. These are items that you're going to hopefully get a good 7 to 10 years use out of.
Well, and I think, Brett, you were at the same meeting for the legislative meeting, and a lot of schools are trying to figure out where they're going to find funding. As you know, we would love more for a lot of the safety features that we have been able to implement. Again, why I feel safe, many reasons with my kids in our schools. But when we were talking with other districts, they did not do a similar thing, and now they're scrambling and trying to figure out how they can provide similar things that we already have in place. So I'm pretty impressed by it as well. I wasn't on the board at the time, but
Watching from
happy to
afar.
see that it's in place.
Thank you.
Yep. And going into the photo section, so here's a shot at some of the wall graphics installed in the cafeteria. And then here's just another look. Yep. And then here's just a shot of that furniture that was unfortunately installed just before, just after the November board meeting, so just catching up to that. And here's a look at the team room. We've removed those lockers and have begun installing the new lockers. And then here's a look up on the second floor, some flooring, excuse me, some flooring prep for the rooms we're preparing to turn over. And here's a look at some of the casework being installed, and our furniture has arrived this week, and they've been installing that as well. And here's just a couple of before and after photos down in the corridor between the cafeteria and the loading dock. You can see the new wall tile. And here's a cool shot at the entrance of the cafeteria where the old courtyard used to be when that was infilled. And here's a look at one of the science classrooms before and after. And here's a look at the multi-purpose field. And then switching over to 1B, here's some before and after shots of the Martha Brown boiler room. And we hop over to Jefferson Ave. And a look at one of the Martha Brown science rooms. And the Brook Hill, Brook Hill front vestibule. Like we said, we're continuing to work on these window systems, but you can see some of the new systems going in lined up against the old there. And then over at Jefferson Ave, the progression and construction of the new parking lot and bus loop. Are there any questions? No, but we will have one coming up shortly.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate your responsiveness, and both Brian and Kevin for all your help.
Thank you.
And teamwork. Happy holidays. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. I had been debating in my mind whether we needed to be more, I'm not sure of the word, strict with the Robert's Rules of Orders in terms of making sure everybody has sufficient time. I don't think we'll start that way, but if it's evidence that we all have a lot to say, then maybe we want to go with some level of time limits, and then we can do round robin type things, but be cognizant. I don't think we start out that way necessarily, but it's is appropriate if we need to. I'll start out if that's okay. In terms of this is a discussion action item, I think I put out there I'm tempted, but I'll wait for some discussion whether I'll move forward, and whether you support it, it'll be up to you, to make a motion though to amend our 2019 resolution to add now a date, a time frame. We did not, prior to all the discussion tonight, it had always been allowing what we thought were the required logistics to kind of dictate the time frame as to when this merger happened. We are no longer constrained by a capital project in terms of the vote being turned down, and so now I think we can make the time frame, or us picking a date, and let the logistics figure out how they get done within the time frame. So reverse the situation. That being the case, because I've made no qualms about it, teasing Brett, somewhat teasing seriousness over the years, right? That I was hoping it would have happened by this year, candidly, and it did not. And again, with the vote going down, and my immediate thought was, oh, there's more than silver linings from my perspective in terms of the long discussion. We spent a year. I was sent notes about our May workshop discussion that said we've done a lot of talking. No, there's not much room for more. It's more than talking. We've done a lot of research. We opened it up to a lot of discussions, and the determination was overall, as is the board's perspective, what's best for our students, what's best for the community as a whole, what's best for us fiscally as a district and whatnot, taking in all the various variables, listened. I know people feel like they weren't listened to. I'm sorry they feel that way, but we did take it in. We did listen. We did make another decision. We passed that resolution in May of 2019. I'm for bringing it up. Forward it. I think all the reasons still exist as to why we passed that resolution. It still stands a resolution. It lacks a date. I would like us to put a date in there. I won't make that motion yet formally. I hold it in reserve for now, right, through this discussion. But happy to open up, and we can just speak up or go down the row. I don't know how people feel about it right now.
As a suggestion, Peter, Joyce, and Marty, you were on the board on that as part of that board that passed that resolution and that discussion. Personally, I'd love to hear from you guys as something as you know what you about that discussion 3 years ago now, and your point of view on where it stands now.
Well, it started long before that. I'm in my 21st year, and I would say most of the time I've been on the board, this has been under discussion. It is not new by any means. And I've heard from many people on both sides. I would say the majority were in favor. Students who have spoken to me have almost all been in favor. And it's something we've discussed a very long time. 2019 was when we made the official decision, but it was coming pre-Brett. It was discussed. This has been under discussion, and we've wanted to do it for a long time. So it is not something new, and I certainly look forward to seeing it happen.
So similarly, I would say this is my 12th year, and it's been in discussion all of that time. You know, part of the constraint as we went along was population, student population, and what would be feasible. But I think the real impetus for the motion that we had was the district advisory committee, who worked long and hard studying many aspects of our work, and this just seemed to be the right thing for students. I think it still is the right thing for students. I fully support and commend Peter's idea of moving this forward, because I think, you know, where we were 10 days ago was thinking that we were going to have an addition to the house to make this more comfortable in terms of physical space, but it's always been the right thing for kids. And since we cannot make the house more comfortable as a result of that vote, I think we just need to look at what we can do to accommodate students and be responsible for the high quality of their education. So I'm right with you, Peter.
Yeah, it's going to look different than we had hoped it would, but as Marty said, it's about the students, and we have to put them first, and they've waited a long time. When we started talking about this, we thought one class would be the first. Then it was going to be a year longer. Well, Pete was pushing forward to try to make it a year less. So I think now, I mean, it's based on the numbers, and the numbers are the same with or without the project, and it's about the students. So my mind has not been changed at all by having the project go down. I'm disappointed that the high school won't look as we had hoped, but we'll do the very best we can, and we'll do what's best for the students.
Brett, you had mentioned that, and probably Joyce and Marty and Peter, the class sizes obviously have gone down significantly. So I know that was looked at as well.
And I do understand, Brett reminds us often, that the spaces in the high school are used differently than they were, say, I don't know, 25 years ago, when we had graduating classes of 600 some. Now, for those that not following, we're in the mid 400s typically. But I do think with accommodations, we can make this work. It's not ideal. It would have been more ideal had we been able to make the additions that we hoped for. But I do think it can work for students, and that's the most important thing.
And this is kind of me speaking, obviously part of the board, but I guess some confusion on my part after the vote. We did have a lot of forums, a lot of meetings, a lot of talking. And my understanding when I joined the board almost 3 years ago was that it was already, done. So I was shocked, to be completely honest, with kind of the notion that a lot of our community had, that the vote was primarily about whether or not to merge Minerva with the high school, and I'm pretty sure that was in play in many situations. So yeah, I still think it's the right thing to do. I think that we need to talk to many folks, many parties, and figure out how we can do this in the best way we can fiscally, now that it's going to look a little bit different. We have a lot of work to do.
Yes, I want to frame the talking, if that makes sense, and why to add a date. Again, we've let the logistics needed dictate when we thought we could merge. I have to admit, I'm not interested in paneling a group of people to study if we can do it now. we made the decision. We always knew that. Now it's enabling a panel to say, how do we get it done by this date? My preference, knowing anybody a heart attack, would be a year and a half from now, right? The 24-25 school year. I imagine that might give some people a heart attack. I don't know.
Did you say? I'm sorry.
24-25, right? So what, excuse 23-24, yes. So a year and a half from now, the current seventh
Current
graders,
seventh graders would be the first to move.
instead of the
forward.
current fifth graders, which was the plan, we make it the current seventh graders.
But
It's-
initially, it was the current seventh graders.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right. The financial potential implications, right? Before we were hesitate to go out that long and project what could we do with the building. Year and a half, 2.5 years. I don't know. We can do that now more reasonably. We can start understanding what's that building that I got at least 10 emails on UPK makes me start thinking, okay, what's the usefulness of that facility? We've always planned on keeping that facility. There's always need for that facility in one ways or another. It's just how does it get used? UPK suddenly enters. That wasn't even in the thought. I don't think much. It brought up, but not nearly as much as I
definitely
think we're hearing
talked.
it now. Oh yeah, it was brought
Okay.
up, but I'm not sure it was ever considered at the depth I would, at least in my mind, right?
Probably
the
more in my
consolidation
mind.
of offices, the selling of Balmer and district office, all these things can be forwarded now sooner. Fiscal responsibility. I'm getting away from the primary because it's been said so much for students. I just see all the possibilities that have opened up to us in a much shorter time frame.
I do just want to circle back to the benefits for students. I think we're all very in that mindset, but the ability to change start times, the difficulty of transitions for kids is huge. And especially at that middle school age, switching different situations, it's not good. And no research supports having additional transitions for kids. We can offer those ninth graders so many more access to electives, additional relationships with trusted adults that can last longer. Those amazing ninth grade teachers at Minerva do amazing things, but we can keep that amazing relationship built longer if they could be together for longer. But I do also want to highlight the financial implications. If we kept Minerva open, and I don't stand for that, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that building for kids. If I was going to keep kids there, we need to do a lot of work. Whereas if we move offices in there, there's work to be done, but it does not even need a semblance of what it would need for kids. We can get that work done, move the offices there, and then get rid of Balmer and get rid of district office, two areas that also need work. I mean, you go to district office, it's not even handicap accessible. So that makes me uncomfortable from that mindset, but it would need a lot of work to do that. So why would we put that burden on our community to do all those changes when we can give kids a better access at the high school?
If I kind of speaking tangent around the financial issues, Peter and maybe Matt, if you could chime in on this. So we have a construction fund is one of our construction reserves that we have. We have money in that.
It takes a vote to access.
I was
going.
Okay. Right. But that's money that's in we have an account, a construction. Can you speak to what the amount of money that's in there, what would have to be done to use that, and if there's any idea of how we could use the money that we have to do work to make this?
Can I just, before
You can
we
do
do
anything
that,
you want,
yeah, before we do that, and I know that that's a lot of ask on their part, and I know that we wanted to give them a bit of window in terms of getting information back to us, but I did just want to stop for just 1 second, and for anybody that's listening, I have had a lot of people say, well, why can't we just tweak the current plan and put it up for another vote? So I just to clarify, because I know people may still be thinking that that's a possibility, which I do not believe it is. So can we maybe talk a little bit about that?
So with another vote, it would require a timeline,
Right.
which, I mean, that's the opposite of what this conversation is about.
Right.
Right. And I think, anytime you're going to access the reserve fund, it's the same process. There's SED requirements, making sure that, we follow a timeline, getting the right approvals. So that would put us back on a timeline, which, that would not coincide with the 24-25 school year.
Right.
I if I may, or does the board want to continue?
Oh, you can have a spot here.
So I do appreciate the clarity, and I always appreciate the clarity. There needs to be an analysis at a higher level, though, at this point. And to put a date on tonight, I don't think would be good for the whole, because I want to make sure, I'm shifting gears now to make sure we put together a credible process, a process that's sound, process that's student focused, one that supports our academic and our programmatic expectations, making sure that we could move forward. I go to Mr. Clark, build this master schedule right now in the middle of the school year. We need to be thoughtful about that. And I want to make sure that I'm giving you information that's accurate. We need to look at Fcsd regulations, municipality laws, on how they apply. And I'd be lying to you right now in good faith and good conscience to be able to say to you, yeah, that's the date. We can go do that. We need to do analysis. And I'd ask for more time so we could do an analysis. But I would also think, that, in the meanwhile, we're going to be bringing our construction team together, asking all the logistical questions that need to be asked, making sure that we're following all the right expectations of Fcsd and municipality laws that govern how we need to do work in schools. If we're looking at workrooms and transitioning them to classrooms, we need to make sure that we have the right specs. If we're making a office for administrative staff, we need to make sure that we're able to do that within the scope of our current funds.
I don't want to piggyback on your workload. But so we are, in case people didn't know, we are allowed to use $100,000 a year from our general fund to support capital work. That's different than a capital project. So we had said when we got the results of the thought exchange back in the fall, our elementary school teachers, students, families were very clear that they want some work done on their buildings. And I have to agree, like those buildings need some love. And our plan had been, we were going to do this capital project, address some stuff at the elementary, but not as much. But then our vote in 2025 for phase 3 was going to really lift up the elementary buildings. I'm worried now that we're going to need to spend money on the high school and we're going to have to use that 100,000. Are we again pushing, because we had said we would aim that 100,000 towards elementary, are we again pushing them off? So I would like us to be mindful of that as well. Like they deserve love too.
So that would be part of our analysis of how does that impact the overall facilities planning schedule. I think one board member said, with accommodations, this can work. And I really want to understand what those accommodations are. And I want to be able to put facts and data behind them. I want to make sure that we're being compliant with all the things that we're supposed to be adhering to when it comes to maintenance and upgrading our facilities. It's just not something that you just go and do. When we talk about the transportation piece, we're still waiting on a final study there. We want that to happen as well, especially if we have and when we have a merger. We want to make sure that coincides. So there's pieces of data. I would like to request that there's a Board of Education special workshop on this very topic. That's all we just talk about, for a 2-hour period. Where we'll have our facts and our data. We can get our calendars together offline here. We don't need to pick it right here, but I would get the Labella team together, the campus team, our internal team with Bob Clark, Aaron, and Matt, and to make sure that we're thinking of all the things. And once we're able to identify all the details, put it into the algorithm, we need to make sure that we're doing everything the right way, that it can actually happen.
What do you need timeline to do that though? Like a month, 6 months? Like
I think we were saying a month.
Yeah. So I was requesting a meeting in February. We'll do it offline. We'll get our calendars. We'll publish it. We'll make it accessible to the public. There was also an interest at one point to possibly do a conversation with the community. Speaking of
we had talked about doing that in January as well. And I feel like I derailed the conversation. I just wanted to clarify some of the questions that many people have been asking me. It's not as easy as, well, just redo this or just redo that. There's a lot of work that was put into it. Like Pete said, if you have a house and you're putting an addition on, Marty, yes, sorry. We're not doing this huge project now, so it could maybe potentially be faster. But it's not as easy as it may look.
I really want to measure 4 times
I know.
before I come to the board with a recommendation, because I know what's at stake, and I know that there's high expectations around it, and I would be remiss if I would sit here and say, hey, let's put that 24-25 timeline on there tonight. I couldn't do that in good conscience. We
Right.
do need that good month plus time with the team to look at the details, check with our SED consultants, and making sure that we're doing the best for our community and our students on that end.
I do think it's cute that you think we'd finish that up in 2 hours.
Well, the other thing I was
New
going to
Year's
mention,
resolution, I don't know.
yeah, we did talk about having kind of a forum or an opportunity for, people in our community, whether you're a teacher or a student or a staff member or just a community member, to come and share kind of maybe thoughts, feelings, opinions. Obviously, we can't make everybody happy, which is hard, but just having more of an open forum.
And I would prefer we make sure we frame that discussion appropriately,
Yeah,
right? This
yeah.
is not a discussion on
No.
whether the merger's happening.
Right.
Right? That discussion was in 2019 and the resolution still stands.
Yep.
We are doing a forum. If we do it, now again, to get everybody's approval, I'm one vote, and you can see I'm pretty adamant about this, but I am only one vote and there's 6 others. Though that be a discussion on how we make this possible. Now, Brett's asked for some time. That can pause, I suppose, a resolution. Thank you for asking the question. It's on my mind how much time to study it, to get some facts around here, to make it possible. I think, though, we probably need some constraints even on that to make it possible by no later than, maybe my wish still isn't this year, right? Sorry, and it won't be next year. I recognize 6 months from now is not realistic. But a year and a half, or is it 2.5, right? But I would be loath to go out longer than 2.5 myself. It's already been later than what we thought.
Well, given the energy that I feel from the board, and I say that with respect, I understand there's urgency here, but I would respectfully ask for a date in February. We'll pick the meeting where it will be a public meeting with the team that explains the variables, that talks about our obligations, and hopefully a level of understanding on how we could meet this request. And from there, you can make an informed decision.
I think, from my vantage point, I think Brett, that's a fair ask. I think being informed is right, but I think that we still need to be prepared. If we don't have the date, set the date tonight, as Peter was talking about, we need to be ready to set that date after that workshop, because I don't want it to be, we have a workshop, well, we have more questions, well, we need more time, and then I think that's what Peter is afraid of, is the cascading, the idea of questions. And I found the note that Peter was mentioned at the beginning, that we've been talking about this, and that was the May 2019 board workshop. And and I know it's been a roller coaster 3 years, but the fact is that was 3 years ago. And Joyce and Marty is saying this has been talked about, this has been in the air since I moved to the community almost 10 years ago.
So here, I hear the board loud and clear about the expectation of having some definitive information into that February meeting. I'm also hearing that a community conversation needs to be framed that invites people to have a conversation on how it will happen. We'll be careful to frame it accordingly. It's not an opinion poll. It's just an opportunity for community members to share their expectations around facilities planning.
Yeah, and I feel like we really need to come together and figure this out to move forward.
You mentioned it would be a public meeting. Are we going to combine the comments from the public at that meeting, or is that going to be separate? Because otherwise it's not a public meeting.
The special board meeting
The workshop.
on the workshop is for the board.
Okay, so it's not a public meeting then?
It's a
It will
special,
be
it's a special
meeting
board
in
of education
public.
workshop in
Right,
public.
but it'll
Correct.
be
Thank
in
you.
public,
Correct.
because otherwise a public
Good.
meeting is different.
Good point.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that no one goes away with that.
Correct.
Language,
Thank you.
right, it means something here.
Yep, so it'll be a meeting in public that the Board of Education will have relative to facilities planning and the merger from Minerva Land to Fairport High School. That will be in February. We'll coordinate our calendars and make sure that everybody can participate, and then we'll publish it accordingly. But then we will have that community conversation in January before then, again, to help, with your thought process, just to inform the board as we move along.
And there was a question earlier, and we skipped over it, about financing and use of reserves and what's available to us.
Right.
I think we asked the finance committee to take up perhaps some of that in the same time frame that's being discussed, there's definitely options there. You're right. We had 19 million slated for this capital project. We still have 19 million.
Right.
Right. That's one of our assets.
Right. And that is, and just again, for people here and people listening, that would come to a community vote because it is using out of construction fund. I'm getting the name wrong.
Reserve fund.
Reserve
Capital
fund.
reserve.
Capital reserve has to be community vote, but that is money that we already have, so that would not increase taxes or be additional. Matt, if I'm speaking out of turn, throw something at me.
No, that's correct. So any money in our capital building reserve is voter approved to establish the fund. Then we can fund it, but in order to get funds out, it needs to be voter approved through, a proposition as well there with specifics in terms of what it'd be used for.
And I did get a question, and it was, where did you get 19 million? You're obviously overtaxing us. That's established over years. And when we create the general fund, we budget for worst case scenarios in a lot of instances. So in one example that's always very salient is a student with special needs moves into the district. It can cost upwards of $100,000 to cover a student's needs. So we have to be mindful in planning that we would never want to not be able to meet our students' needs. So at the end of the year, when we have, hopefully, a positive amount of money left over, the board deliberates and we move it into different reserve funds, saving funds. So that's your tax money being mindfully saved to plan for projects like this when it's available to us. So that's years building up to that 19 million. It wasn't like we added it on to last year's general fund and then just moved it over. That was years of planning.
Building aid units, Matt, still available if we do things in smaller chunks, and I'm just ideating. Please don't quote me. It will be in the minutes, I suppose. But, I'm sick of our music rooms, right? I can think of those at our technology rooms. But the elementary schools, we still can get building aid units on all these, even if it's not part of a major construction project.
We can. So, I mean,
That
the key
multiplies our asset by, right, 70-30, whatever the aid is.
So the key part to remember, in order to access state building aid, it will have to follow every requirement of SED with a project approval, submission to state ed, building permits, all of those. Even any small construction projects that you may want to have, release funds for, not capitalize on building aid, could still fall under all those requirements. So I think those are some of the key pieces we just have to keep in mind. That while as we're looking through this process, to understand working, as Brett was talking, just the time to understand the different pieces, at the high school, could be, still, depending on what it ends up being, could be subject to some of those requirements that we have.
And that is a process, capital P, going through
So
SED.
as soon as you go through SED and you access funds, the extent also matters too, right? So, we do go through SED and can go through SED to get building permits, but that's different than, a major capital project too. So we need to weigh all those pieces out, which we'll be spending the next several weeks trying to do. So you have a good idea of what that means for the timeline.
Yeah. In project, just as President Forsgren mentioned, we can access building aid, available building aid at the state. Many times projects aren't even necessarily, to the millions that we've done in the past. Some are $1 million projects that are still accessing building aid, or, again, it depends on size of districts as well. There's different impacts in different districts that size of projects they have and how that impacts their own levies. So projects can range from multitude of different dollar amounts, depending on the extent of work, but still would flow through the state education department to access the building aid.
Joyce, can I just go back to something that you were saying about like the community forum meeting? If we were to come together, or when we were to come together talking about the merger and having the community input, are you thinking that that is something different than, say, public comments?
Yes.
Something more open, which I would be very much for that idea.
Yeah, a real open meeting.
Yes, a very open meeting. Second of all, if I can, I'm going
And that's
back.
versus a public meeting.
Yes, exactly. And I'm just sitting here reflecting, and I'm thinking back to Brett's, your exit, the exit poll. Yes, thank you. And one of the first thing on that list was academics, and I think that is everybody's, that need to focus on academics. And as I looked at that, I was thinking about what this merger is all about. And to me, it's really all about academics. It's giving our ninth graders that tangible, grasp to all the academic offerings of the high school. And, we certainly did a lot of reflecting in this last week. And, one of those, a big piece of this plan was to be putting more classrooms designed to science, technology, engineering, arts, and music, and math, if you want to. And they were, I just feel like I can't let this meeting go. They were not steam rooms. They were not saunas. I have to say it. I'm sorry. We wanted to make our high school a place of the future that was going to be innovative. Again, these rooms are, for that whole host of academics: science, technology, engineering, arts, music, and math. I also am thinking back just quickly to my conversation at Minerva, where I asked the ninth graders, I said, so, one thing that we thought about was, if you are in the high school, and because they really did talk about a lot of hate speech, they talked a lot about, the behaviors. And I said, do you think it would ever help if you were in a high school with older students as role models? And they said it really might. It really might. When there's racial language and there's racial hate speech, to have clubs and organizations like the Black Student Union to be able to be a part of that conversation. So I just want to again convey this to the community that, that need to focus on academics is that's what we are really trying to do in this merger, is to focus on the academic needs of, I think probably in particular our ninth graders. So,
and to build off that, and at our building visit to the high school, one of the students who I was visiting with said that she was just amazed at the list of electives that she got to pick from, and it's just this pages of list, just amazed. And of course, credit to Bob Clark and his team for that. And now to think that with this merger, another 300 whatever students will have access to those electives is just exciting. I mean, we had the presentation of the Spark Lab, which is elementary based, I know, but that kind of excitement about learning, getting to students a year earlier with all these opportunities that are available at the high school, like, it is genuinely exciting as someone who's in education, as someone who teaches, and that is so thrilling to be able to give these, to be able to hopefully provide students with that. We will be able to provide students with that opportunity.
There has been consistent enrollment studies over the past several years, and we're able to confirm, within the next, 5 years, definitely, there's not too many surveys that will go beyond 5 years, but, safely between 400 and 430, 440 per graduating class, for the next 5 to 10 years, we could feel comfortable, certainly.
And I know that some of the electives students wouldn't be eligible, because I'll get that feedback as well. But I did want to just say that there are students who do take maybe some higher level courses. They're an accelerated or maybe an AP class. And currently they have to spend time on the bus being transferred back and forth. So just adding that on, because I know not every elective is available to every student, but there are other reasons as well.
I will acknowledge, Mr. Provenzano, to be a little formal, that we're putting you a bit in an awkward situation, I suppose, in terms of representing the board, but also representing the staff, and the conflicting feedback that you're going to get from that, those support and those who don't. I appreciate you always being a good face for the board. Tough situation to be in. I emphasize that partly for everybody, that this has been a board decision. This is something we did study. I do fear time made it feel like what you were suggesting, that, oh, it will just go away. And that wasn't ever the case. It was never planned to be the case, and it never left our minds, at least. We had a plan for the sake of what's best for the students. All that changed on Tuesday, a week ago, right? And only changed not what's best for the students, but, the time frame we can do this in, all right, really changed. I'm excited about that. I found it invigorating. I have not been overly disappointed in some ways. I'm disappointed that our facilities are not going to get less expensive to bring up the speed, right? It's only going to get more expensive. And that's one of the big downsides is, to redo these rooms will be more expensive than it would be to do right now. And it's more expensive than it would have been had we kind of more maintained them on a regular schedule, which we have been trying to get to. How do we get our facilities up to speed, up to where they should be, and then institute a regular schedule of that from now on, which we never had as part of a long-term plan. We'll still get there. We'll look at it from different ways. Thank you for taking and studying some of this. You want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on my takeaways here.
Well, so that's why I was going to
Okay,
get to summary,
sorry.
right?
I
No,
apologize.
I don't know. I was pretty determined since even the vote night, right, to make a motion. I think out of respect, I can withhold until February, perhaps business meeting, to amend the resolution. Partly leaves a bad taste in my mouth yet again to delay, right, yet again. But I'm not in the administration seat to recognize the transportation challenges, the classroom utilization challenges, the master schedule associated with it, to recognize the challenges, to say that it should be next year or year and a half or 2.5. I can recognize that, right? But by summary, you have a good feel for where we are.
The board's made it clear that, by February, we'll have that special session for a board meeting to have, for the board to have a meeting in public that will speak to the merger, the variables that we need to consider that will feed into your ability to make a decision on a timeline for your business meeting.
And I think if we, at least I'm coming into this, I'm grateful, Peter, for your advocacy. I'm grateful, Brett, for listening and for dealing with the various constituencies that you have to, and everyone on the board for their input. This is what we do best, I think, is these kind of discussions about student and what's best for them. I think I am ready. I don't know if we would put this in writing or remote, but I'm kind of committed in my mind that at the February business meeting, we will be basically doing what Peter wanted to do tonight, which is putting a date and a timeline on the merger. I don't want to be pushing, have this meeting in February and the forum in January, which is great, but then to push it off. And then I think, I don't know if we commit to it right now, but I'm kind of mentally committed if that's a thing.
The reason I would do right now, though, I think the only one reason is to solidify the framing of the discussion, right?
That's
Hesitancy of not putting it in tonight means that the discussion for some people's minds might be, maybe we can still change their mind.
I also,
My mind's not going to be changed.
no, I also worry that we gather the information and we go to the February meeting and we're told, it can't happen for 3.5 years. It's impossible. And if we say, no, 2024 is it, well, then make it possible. I think back to the construction here at the high school. Originally, from my understanding, it was that there had to be a new science wing. Well, when that didn't get approved from SED, it was made possible how to get the science classrooms to fit into the original footprint. So I guess my gut feeling about the timeline is I don't want to go in February and hear it can't happen. We need 2, 3, 4 more years out of it.
So I respect that, and I respect everybody's passion behind that. I'm going to try to stay focused on giving you credible and sound information so you can make a credible and sound decision. And that sounds, high level speak, but that's what I need to do. You need to make good decisions based upon information that you have. And I can't promise you that, it's going to be clean and neat, but I can promise you we're going to study it and we're going to give you information that will inform your ability to make a decision, right? I can't tell you it's going to be the decision that you're going to love, but we're going to turn it upside down and we're going to continue to work with all the moving parts to make sure that we give you the right information for the good of our students, staff, and community. That's my pledge.
Perhaps we could frame it that this is what it would, for part of the discussion at least, this is what it would look like if we committed to a 2024 date. So not like this is what we need to do, this is what we need to do. This is what it would actually look like for a 2024 date and what either would happen or.
I want to give you a real scenario.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I want to give you a real scenario with information that we need, the logistics that we need to manage, the SED guidelines that we need to follow, and the laws governing municipalities when we get into construction work. And I know that you want that to be done with the highest level of diligence with your passions here too.
So I've noted 3 meetings just so that we don't lose one of them. One is the February meeting. That will be what's the right word? Public meeting?
A meeting in public.
Held in public. We will do a January, though, community forum, right? But third is the finance committee right? Let's convene the finance committee as well to talk specifically around ideas of the different use of the financial assets that we have that can either serve this or be directed to other purposes, like elementary schools, if you know, if we so choose. But that's definitely on the table. I think that should occur before the February business meeting as well.
Just, you know, me and clear communication, right? You gotten used to that right now. I think we can clearly say, and please, anybody objects and say not, the board is still committed to merging Minerva DeLand and the high school. Like, we are affirming that resolution that was in 2019. The schools are going to merge. In terms of, you know, it appears, like you said, to framing the discussion, that's going to happen.
That resolution is on the books of 2019.
Okay.
It has not been removed. That's
Okay.
correct. A board could remove it. I'm not going to doubt that, but that's not this
But
board.
as of our conversation right now.
Yep.
Okay. I just,
No
again,
sense that
being
this
clear,
board's
being clear on it to frame the discussion so that there's not, as Erica was saying, well, we can talk them out of it. Well, we can da-da-da-da-da. So we move forward from here.
That's clear. Thank you.
Okay. So no action item with that one then. We will add that to the February. What's that?
Just a lot of meetings.
Just, I suppose those are action items. Additional meetings. Okay. Policy first read. Motion to approve the first reading of the policies.
Second.
Marty, thank you. Or was that Joyce? Sorry. Joyce, thank you.
Second.
Brian was second. Questions, comments? And I know I had one, but I've done a lot of talking. 7313, the suspension of students. And partly because saw this in, or part of our weekly notes meeting with superintendent, no discussion in there about appropriateness at the elementary level.
Excellent point. So we had our meeting in for the Regional Equity Network last week, and we were talking with Children's Agenda about their policy initiative about suspension, particularly solutions, not suspensions, particularly suspensions at the elementary school. And it did make me reflect back onto this policy. Is that something we wanted to take forward ourselves? But I think that would be a great workshop topic to look at our numbers, because we do have numbers. So the Children's Agenda presented it, and that's something we could ask them to give us further information, but we do have children that get suspended at elementary school. So perhaps that's something we want to take on, even if the legislature doesn't take it on.
I mentioned at our meeting that I felt there should be a minimum age, and we didn't end up discussing it further and putting it in here, but I'm still in favor of that. I don't know if legally we could do that. We'd have to go through the attorney.
So based on that, pass this first read tonight. Don't necessarily remove it then and have you all go back and work on that, or because you can visit that at any time. So we'll do the update with where we are today. Is that what you would say as a policy committee?
Yeah. Remember, we do have a code of conduct, and within that code of conduct, there are ranges in tiers of interventions, the ways to support students. So I know that we'll need to bring that to the forefront. Resources that we would need in the building, timely during budget season to support, and an imperative as such. So lots to discuss there.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No. I would recommend that we go forward with it, because there are some legality changes that BOCES had advised us that we should get on the books.
Okay.
And then we can adjust it.
Yeah, we can adjust it in the future.
Yep. Sorry, and I'm just making a note. You asked, potentially I just put in the parking lot for a workshop discussion then.
I think that would be great.
Yep. Okay.
It needs to be a workshop soon, if we're gonna go to second reading.
I put it under January already, but I don't know how busy, how many other topics might come up, right? And know how we are with our workshops already. Okay, so any other questions about any of the policies on the first read? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Without really amending the agenda, I'm wondering about doing 7F here, because the minutes reflected that we wouldn't need a second read, right? That's the reason for taking the minutes out, was because it showed that somehow a motion had been made to do first and second read all in once last meeting for those policies in first read, which was not an accurate reflection of what happened that night.
I think it was the patriotism one that we were going to read just once.
It was just the
And
one.
then somehow the whole thing got into
Right.
that category.
So the minutes have been removed for the sake of us being able to amend the minutes. Is that right? Which we need a motion to do. And I just think maybe we should make that motion before the second read because all these second read policies are, I hope we're not causing confusion, but.
No, so I'd like to make a motion to move 7F to 7C and then move everything down one letter.
Right.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
What she said.
Yeah.
So what, yeah.
So the amendment to the agenda will be 7C now.
Right. All in favor? Okay, so we'll move on to what's now 7C, which is to discuss the minutes of the last board meeting.
If you refresh, it should be there.
I got you. Famous last words.
Oh, it is, but you always have to go back
That's
to the
impressive, Pam.
first screen, right? At least mine, I have to go back to and then come back in.
It's right on mine, so I'm.
Down.
I'm gonna do it the old fashioned.
Yes, it is.
Oh, sorry, Brett.
That's okay.
Yep, so I have it as 7C. And the motion is to amend the minutes of the regular board meeting to reflect policy first read as only a first read and not a second read for all but the patriotism amendment, is patriotism policy, is that correct?
That was the one that we were supposed to have been done as one read, but it doesn't matter if we read. If we do it tonight, it's still in.
You're right, so, okay, let's
yeah,
not
let's just
confuse
do
it.
We'll leave it and move forward.
Right, so it's still there, right, so just to reflect that in the minutes of the last board meeting, reflect that it was just a first read and not a second read.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll ask for those minutes to be amended accordingly. And then that takes us to the second read, which is all these policies that were in the first read of the last meeting. If you're thoroughly confused, okay, we'll replay this several times and see how we could word this better. But yes, so a motion to approve the second read of the policies.
So moved.
Erica, thank you.
Second.
Second,
Yeah, that's right.
Jan?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been quiet, so I'll take.
Questions or comments about these policies from the last board meeting?
Just for future second reads, Pam, could we have them not marked up when we go to the second?
Oh, right. That's probably right.
That's just a little thing.
Administrative, right? They should look the final. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Try and make a note of that. All in favor?
Aye.
Right, and then we do have one policy, 8330, to do a first and second read. First and final reading as worded in terms of the action. So a motion,
Moved.
Mary Caitlin?
Second.
Second, Erica. Questions or comments?
Go ahead.
I had a question, and I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. My understanding was that it used to be if a parent or community member had a concern, they went to the library media specialist and the principal first. That was my understanding. And then if there was not a resolution, it then went to the board. Again, if I'm reading it correctly, it now appears that they come to the superintendent initially.
So our old policy had said instructional staff or school librarian, not the principal.
Okay.
So what we talked about at policy is putting superintendent and or their designee with the first step being the principal, who would then convene their team of teachers and librarians.
So what that does, it cues everybody in. So if it does come to the superintendent, I cue the board in, I cue the building in, and the process can begin.
Yeah, so part of this, if you go down in the agenda, is the regulation that Superintendent Provenzano has rewritten, and that is part of it. So rather than, a solitary teacher or a solitary librarian trying to take this on, it's a team conversation and everybody's looped in.
So just to translate legalese, the superintendent or assigned designee, the principal would be the assigned designee in this situation.
If it went
Could
to
be,
the principal,
yes, could be, yeah.
It might be
Teacher.
a
Yeah.
director, it might be.
Okay, just.
But for a building piece, it's usually the principal.
Yeah. The majority of changes for this was a BOCES change for changes in regulation.
Good point.
So we wanted to reflect that. And because this is a topic that has been coming up often in school districts throughout the nation, we felt it would be best to do a first and second read just so we were up on the latest SED and state ed regulations for it.
And Mary Caitlin, again, in the spirit of trying to be as clear as possible, and this was even something that I didn't understand before coming to the board, this is not necessarily policies that our policy committee are just sitting down independently saying, these are the policies we want from Fairport Central School District. These are policies that are coming from BOCES.
Commissioner regulations.
Yeah, these are
State.
state regulations. So
Sometimes
these
federal.
are,
Sorry, so when we say BOCES, we subscribe, and most districts in New York State subscribe to a service. We subscribe to Erie 2 BOCES, and they kind of take on the ever-evolving SED, New York State Legislature, federal requirements, and update policies so that everybody is in alignment with that. So they send us updates, and then we as the policy committee look at those updates, make the appropriate changes, and make it fit anything that's specific to Fairport. So for instance, when we were looking at materials for non-public schools, you could insert your own date and time frame in there for your thing. So you make it more Fairport specific. But yes, the majority of the work comes from that service.
thank you.
Okay. You ready? Okay. I think Erica's pre-voting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. 7-0. And finally, what is now 7F, right? Good, I did refresh. Is fields or school-sponsored field trips.
Love to see these.
Yeah. All motion to approve.
So
Second.
second.
Thank you, Jan, Erica, and Jan. Just a question. We've seen the UN, Model UN, haven't we, for 3 months in a row now? What's the difference each month?
I think this is the next level, but I also had a question on it because it says cost per student is $80, but then the total cost is $1,360, and then it's student funded.
Which strip is this? I'm sorry.
It's Model UN.
The Model UN.
It's an extracurricular. It's not a mandated course, so that's where you'll see some funds. And I know that, Mr. Clark and his team work with all sorts of different groups to support any financial needs. So if this was a classroom mandated course that kids are going through, you would see no extra costs associated.
Okay, but our team is looking if students would miss out on this
Always.
opportunity.
And I think, again, one of the things we're proud about is how it's baked into who we are. And we really try to make sure that if there are kids that can't get somewhere, we do all we can to mitigate that.
Similar to the JP trip.
Right, to DC. Other questions, comments? All in favor? Any opposed? And 7-0. Brings us to board comments. We'll note, unless anything changed at the last minute, we don't have executive session on here, so this is a holiday miracle. Yes, indeed, but wishing everyone, for my last comment, indeed a happy holiday. Hope there is time for rest, relaxation with family, joyous moments.
You're here.
Anyone else? No? We've made enough comments for the night? Then
We did.
a motion to adjourn. Mary Caitlin, second. Brian, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Pam, do you want me to go?